Here you go. You're welcome.
Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, sorors. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Good afternoon, sorors. It's 2 o'clock, so we're going to get started. My name is Tanya Ross, and I am currently serving as the co-chair for the Program Planning and Development Committee. And by new definition of Madam President, our chapter internal development coordinator or something like that. She'll correct me about that title later.
Yes,
so
that's
thank
it.
you. That's it. Okay. Thank you for taking time out of your Sunday to to participate in our internal development. And again, we're just trying to make certain that we provide opportunities for growth and education for our chapter so that we can be the best chapter that we can possibly be. So we're not going to belabor anything. We're going to have some words of welcome from our wonderful chapter president. I'll introduce our presenter for today, and we're going to dig right in. Madam President.
Okay, once again, sir, so just welcome. We're glad that you could be with us on this afternoon. And as we have said, and our theme for this year, Let's Get It Sis, the I is for internal development. So as a chapter, we have decided that we're going to focus on internal development. So we thought it would be apropos to have this workshop today because as we know, an informed soror helps the meetings to move along more efficiently. So I want to thank you all for being here with us today. And thank you, Soror Eason Ross, for accepting the position of the coordinator of internal development, because it's that important that we needed someone to coordinate and put everything together for us. So once again, Sorors, thank you. And I'll turn it back over to Soror Eason Ross.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a few housekeeping rules. I'm going to ask that everyone would mute yourselves while we are having our process. Please, 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 if you have any questions or comments or concerns, you can share them in the chat. Also use that, so we will identify you if you need to ask a pertinent question during the presentation, unless our presenter chooses to do something differently. And without any further ado, our presenter today is no stranger to many of us. She's been a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority for 25 plus years, and she served in various capacities within our organization. She is a current member of Valley Forge Alumni Chapter, but as it relates to the work we're going to be doing today, she has been a member of the National Association of Parliamentarians since 2003, where she has earned the rank of a professional registered parliamentarian. She is a member of the American Institute of Parliamentarians, and she currently serves as the Vice President of the NL Carter Unit, as well as parliamentarian to the Montgomery County Unit, both of which are units within the Pennsylvania Association of Parliamentarians. So sorors, our presenter for today is Beljua Garrett. Soror Garrett, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi. And as you know, Tanya and I had a fight about this bio, right? Because I said, okay, 99.9% of you, I know who you are. We've seen each other, we crossed the paths. And those that know me, I'm not one for that traditional, sticky, introduction. I don't do that either. So it's just here, to have an opportunity. And I certainly thank you, President Anthony, for the invitation. And it sounds like Tanya is your, she's a DID. She's got the hookup here today. So I want to thank her for, and also, trying to work with me on this to get this done. So that in itself is a chore, right, Tanya? So, yes. So I appreciate her patience. And so again, thank you. And I think, today in this workshop for parliamentary procedure, certainly as you've heard, it is something I've been interested in. And I think several of you on here, we started, I think McAllister and I started with Dr. Scott back in 2002 or 2003. And it is not only just for how you conduct yourselves and knowing how to conduct your meeting, but it's certainly a skill set you can take in every aspect of your life. But as far as presentation and being prepared and being on time, those are certainly key. And like anything, you want to know whatever you're participating in, the more you can know about that, the less people can try to steer you the wrong direction. So though we have a lot of information packed in here this afternoon, as I share with Tanya, is that I want you, the chapter members, to kind of guide the process, for as questions, and then let me know where you want to spend, some additional time and some issues that you have. So at the end, that we make sure that we've covered all those important issues and things that are just stirring at you and eating at you that you think you might have right, that you think the chapter can improve in areas on, so that we are hopefully able to answer those today. So, well, thank you again, and Tanya. All right, we pretty much covered. Again, today's presentation is your basic parliamentary procedure. And again, hopefully to give you an opportunity to get comfortable with Robert's Rules of Order. Those of you that seen the big white book, it certainly can be intimidating, but hopefully you'll be able to take away a couple skills and some tips today that will make you more comfortable so that you can be a fully functional and not be afraid in chapter meeting to speak up. Next slide, please. So the goals today for Quaker City Alumni Chapter are to explain the importance of parliamentary procedure, and so that you know the organizations of your rules, that you'll be able to explain those, that you're able, by the end of this presentation, to clearly state a concise main motion and hopefully be able to properly execute 2 more motions that you may not have been familiar with prior to today. And we will spend some time today working on committee reports and how to create those, that they are in business-like form, they're brief, but also clear in content. Next slide, please. So I always like to start with a little activity before we begin. And so some of you are probably familiar with the 5-second rule game, but I decided I'd give you about 55 extra seconds because 5 seconds could be a little fast answers for some of these. So I want you to take a quick moment and put your thinking caps on, and we'll see, and then we'll use the chat room, the chat box for this. And so your first question that you are to answer in 60 seconds or less is to list as many elected officers of Quaker City Alumni Chapter, the positions, I don't want the name, but the position, the offices of Quaker City Alumni Chapter that you can in 60 seconds. All right, go. And Tanya, you'll be able to just let me know what you see in the chat, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All righty. Probably get a couple
We
extra
have
seconds here.
president, treasurer, president, first vice president, second vice president, president, treasurer, chaplain. I see secretary,
Okay.
parliamentary, I know you mean parliamentarian. Okay, Sheila's showing off. She got president, first vice president, second vice president, recording secretary, corresponding secretary, treasurer, financial secretary. We have chair of nominating. Someone noted that chaplain is appointed. Nominating chair, member of nominating, assistant treasurer, assistant financial secretary, chair of audit.
Okay. All right. Good job. Good job.
Yep.
Is your Madam President, Anthony, do you elect your parliamentarian?
No, we don't elect them parliamentary.
Just checking. Just checking. All right. Good job. So you have a president, of course, the first vice, the second vice, treasurer. You elect your sergeant at arms as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you sure?
Yes, we had to appoint so many this year, and then I was, yes.
Okay. I'm gonna let the president off the hook. Okay.
No, look, me. Yes, we do.
All right. Second question. True or false? Can a quorum be changed on the spot during the meeting? Can the quorum be changed on the spot during the meeting? True or false? Go. This one shouldn't take that long. No, false.
Everything is coming up false. Yep, I see all false.
All false? All right, I'm gonna reduce you guys from 60 seconds to 30 seconds because you're pretty good. All right, with this one. All right, good job. True or false? Every motion must be receive a second. Every motion must be seconded. True or false?
That's a mixed bag. I see some true, I see some false.
Okay, so we are going to put a pin in that one because we will discuss that later. All right, couple more seconds there. Anybody else? All right, one more. Let's see. True or false? Chapter committees make the final decision on the actions that the chapter will take. True or false?
Everything coming in says false.
All right. Couldn't trick you with that one. Good job. Good job. All right, we'll stop that one. Thanks, Tanya. All right. All right. All right, so we'll move on to the next slide, please. All right. So I know this is probably not the case in Quaker City, as we've had September chapter meeting, or even last year. I know this is not how your members will speak to each other during chapter meeting. So the question is, why do we have rules? And in some organizations, and from time to time, even though it may not be this extreme, we can all relate to times where members sometimes get into a little disagreement or argument about what the issue is on the table or how they think certain things may be done. And so that's why it's important to have the rules, number one, so everybody is clear, everybody is on the same page and understanding the position, understand what the goals and objectives of the particular chapter or the group are. And so we're not having these confrontations during the meeting. And also having the rules also helps keep order. And so the president has an opportunity to keep the meeting on track. And so it is in control, not in a way of taking control, but in a way that control allows everyone to be able to hear, to understand, and that the meeting is run efficiently. Okay, next slide, please. And so many of you probably heard of Henry M. Robert himself. So this is he is not, the guy in the photo is the author, but as you know, the author of Henry Roberts III was published in 1876. We are currently, and it was just released in September on the 12th edition. And this is the parliamentary authority of the sorority. Next slide, please. And this is the current, again, I just said the 12th edition was released in September. And this is, so if you still have the eggplant color book, we need to put that one aside and either order the 12th edition from the National Association of Parliamentarians. It's also available on Amazon. Next slide, please. All right, so some of the basic concepts of parliamentary procedure. Parliamentary procedure is primarily, and I know it's a lot of people think that it's this, elongated definition is really complex and it's difficult to understand. But at the end of the day, it's a set of rules that hopefully allows your meeting to run smoothly and in order, and then everybody has an opportunity to be heard fairly. Next slide. And a few of the fundamental principles of parliamentary law. And as I stated a little while ago with the cartoon where the two individuals were screaming and yelling at each other, these fundamental principles of parliamentary law hopefully will allow that to happen less frequently, because in parliamentary law, every member has the basic rights that cannot be suspended. Even the absentees who are not present during the meeting, they have rights that can't be suspended as well. And so what that means is that when, that's why you have a quorum, so you don't have, so what's your current membership of Quaker City, Madam President?
162.
So you have 162 members and you have 22 that may show up on a given Saturday, and then you return the next month and those 22 have made all the decisions. So again, you want to make sure that it's fair. Every member is entitled to be heard and to hold office and to vote. And the right to vote is limited to members. So someone can't walk in off the street without you thoroughly have checked that they are members of the organization and that they are members of the sorority before they're allowed to vote. And so that means if someone wanted to, they come new to the meeting, you have to make sure they pay their dues. Otherwise, that's just like someone walking in off the street and just making decisions for your chapter. And so to make sure there is order at all times, only one motion can be considered at a time. And so that means you can't have 3 or 4 proposals on the floor at one time, and everyone is confused and has no idea what may be what's taking place at that time. Next slide, please. A couple of these we've covered. Again, a few of the other fundamental principles of parliamentary law is, let's see, which one have we covered? Each proposal is entitled to free and open debate. Members of the chapter cannot present a proposal and even as the president cannot deny the members the opportunity of free and full debate just because she may not agree. It wants to be on the floor or other members may not agree. You have to allow each proposal free and full debate. Again, we talked about only one motion before the assembly at a time. And if number 5 is really important as we talk about fair, and I don't want to say fair, free elections given what's going on right now, but so I want to use that term, but to make sure that every individual in the chapter is heard and the proceedings are fair, is that decisions of the assembly supersede the individual. So, you've often heard it's not about the individual, it's about the group. And sometimes decisions will be made that you may not agree with or may not have voted for or in favor of. But at the end of the day, the decision of the group is what you go, is what you are then to move in lockstep with. And because it's not about you, it's about the organization and the goals and objectives of the organization. Next slide, please. Again, so why should you as the individual member know the rules? There are a few responses here on the slide. So if you would take a moment in the chat room, if there are any other reasons that you think that you should know and be familiar with the rules of your organization and of your chapter, take a couple seconds and place those in the chat. So we certainly know that rules empower you as a member. They help maintain order. They expedite business. They help you carry out the goals and objectives of your organization. Can anyone think of any other reasons why you as the member should know the rules? Okay, I see to be an effective voter and member. Yes, Cassandra, that's correct. Anyone else? Compliance. Compliance, yeah, knowing the rules. You need to know the rules around compliance, and certainly the items that are listed on the compliance, because that is a mandatory requirement for the organization. Anyone else? All right. Next slide, please. To be educated, that's correct. All right. So understanding rules, we're very quickly going to review the ranking order of rules. The 6 rules listed here are the ranking orders of rules, and they're in their hierarchy. So rules have levels. So you have the law, you have the corporate charter, bylaws and constitution, rules of order, standing rules, and custom. And so would anybody want to quickly, and I'm gonna, since this, what do we have, 58, and we're gonna see if we can do this and not have a lot of disturbance, but if you either raise your hand or if you can unmute yourself, if anyone would like to give me an example of a law or explain what type of rule laws are.
Laws are rules or ordinances provided by state or country.
Yeah, laws are, thank you. Laws, yes, by the federal government or laws, your state laws, and your local municipality or township laws. What about your corporate charter? Who can define corporate charter? What is a corporate charter? Anyone know what a corporate charter is? Okay, corporate charters is the second highest level of rules. And very simply, those are, if you remember, or if you know, when Delta Sigma Theta's name is listed, it's always comma Inc. Incorporated. Incorporated Organizations and groups that are incorporated have corporate charters. And that's where it spells out your, again, it's all, again, it's illegal and you need a lawyer. You certainly want to have a lawyer to draft it. And it's you incorporated, and Delta Sigma Theta is incorporated in the state of DC. It helps if you are to protect the members against being sued, against if we make sure then that each chapter and organization is following its rules, and it has tax implications as well. The third highest rule are bylaws and constitutions. So I'm sure everyone is familiar with this level of rules. Can anybody give me an example of a bylaw or what you would find in the bylaws or a constitution? So your bylaws are the highest level of laws that most groups will have. Can anybody give me an example of a bylaw? No takers? No takers? No takers. Establishing a quorum. Yes, thank you, Lynn. Yeah, your quorum is found in your bylaws as well. That is one of the items that you will find in your bylaws. And then we have the next level of rules is rules of order. And your parliamentary authority is a type of a rule of order. And another set of rules of order are those rules that an organization would like to do differently than what's in the parliamentary authority. And so one example is in the parliamentary authority, it says debate is for 10 minutes. But your organization or your group, and in Quaker City, I don't know, you may have rules for how long debate is. That's an example of a rule of order. It differs from what's in Robert. Okay, so standing rules, can anybody give me an example of a standing rule? Do you know what standing rules are? Takers? Anybody, Tanya? No takers on the standing rule?
No one has typed anything in the chat.
Let's see if I
And
can
Soros, I can't see if you raise your hand, so just unmute yourself and then speak, or just type in the chat, because I can't have all those different screens. I can't see them all.
All right, let's see. Does Quaker City have any rules around on a particular meeting that you may wear a certain color, or a particular process you use to, if you were meeting in person, that members will sign in? No, they just show up and sign in, put your name on. Or how do you sign your members? How do members sign in for your meeting?
We have we pull the roster of financial members from, this is Sean Anthony.
Yeah.
We pull the rosters of, of the financial members from the red zone, and we have, typically if we're meeting in person, then we have our sergeant at arms sitting there, and the SORs would sign in next to their name.
Okay.
Since we're meeting virtually, everyone has to be identified prior to coming into the meeting, and the sergeant at arms is behind the scenes virtually. And as they come into the waiting room, she checks the list to see that their names are on the list, and then they're allowed to enter the meeting.
So in there, and in those instructions, I know the organization received instructions on how to proceed with the Zoom meetings, setting a time for people to check in. I think just like today, if you have this written in your rules, and even though it's in practice, standing rules would be sign in by 15 minutes. Or on the first Saturday in September or October, we're all going to decide to wear the color black. Those are rules that you can change on a frequent basis. So you come in a meeting, they're majority, by a majority vote, you can change those rules, not rules that you're stuck with as you would be in the bylaws for, I don't want to say stuck with, but they're more and higher and more important. So you want to make them more difficult to change. Standing rules, you can decide, well, this is how our treasurer is going to collect money if you were in person. And then next month you may decide, well, we don't like the way that works. We come in, someone places a motion on the floor, you adopt it, boom, you're ready to go. It's a standing rule. And custom, and I am certain all of you are familiar with custom because somewhere in that custom, this is probably what may cause us some arguments because you just believe and you know that is the rule. So does Quaker City have any customs that are not written down as rules?
Would that be customs as it refers to like committee reports that we vote on, all ending reports, all end of the year reports?
if you don't have that written down somewhere, that's a practice that the chapter has certainly exercised, I guess, over the years. Yes, that would be a custom. There's no rule for that, but that would be a custom. Yeah.
Okay. Now, for custom, does that mean you have to always do that, or
No.
that's just,
You know, custom is certainly whatever, and you find it's a lot, whatever the practice of the organization or the group is, that's not written in one of your, either it's a standing rule or a bylaw or a rule of order, you just do it. And so let's just take, for instance, that, you see you always wore black in October. It's not written anywhere. And far be it from you, Madam President, to come in and suggest, well, this October, I think we'll wear red. And everyone will go up in arms because we've been wearing black for like 30 years. And then you come in here, you're going to make it, they swear that's the rule, but that's the custom. And so if you want a custom to be something that is continuous, and if you think you're going to fight and argue about it, it is smart to, to have it written down as a standing rule. So you don't have those disagreements. But so that would be a custom. Yeah. All right. Any questions on any of the hierarchies or ranking order rules? All right, next slide, please. So now we're going to take a look at what happens at a meeting. And before we go to the next slide, I like to refer to these group of persons or officers as the parliamentary team. Who can, in the chat box, please tell me, there are 3 players on this team. Who can tell me what the 3 players are? And please type that in the chat box. So the 3 officers that will be the 3 members of the parliamentary team. Good job, Sheila. All right, anybody else? Any other responses, Tanya? No, that was it. All right.
Nope.
Nope.
We have one that just typed in president and parliamentarian.
All right. So we'll take a look at the parliamentary team, the quorum, and what I refer to as the SOB, the standard order of business. Next slide, please. All right, next slide. So this is it. So your president. So now there's Madam President, as part of the parliamentary team, what are your duties and responsibilities in addition to what you see here? As you understand it, yeah.
I would say to make sure that the meeting moves efficiently and to make sure that both sides of an argument are heard, but in an orderly fashion, and ensure the processing of the motions, that motion be processed.
What are some, in order for the meeting to run efficiently, what are some of the things that you would want the president to do prior to a meeting? And who should she meet with prior to a meeting?
That's for me, or that's for anyone?
That's for you, yeah, Madam President.
I would have to meet with the executive board prior to, you mean prior to the executive board meeting or prior to a chapter?
Either one, yeah, either one.
So because the executive board meeting is kind of plans the outline for the chapter meeting. So I would need to know what each committee chair is going to present, whether they're going to, have a motion or not. Who else do I need to meet with?
Yeah, that's good. You're good. So in order to plan the meeting, you want to make sure that you are you're able to, certainly that the rules. Primarily, the president must know the rules. Absolutely, a president who's in the seat and doesn't know the rule, that's chaos at its best. And again, and knowing how to conduct the various votes that need to take place. And then, as you said, from executive board meeting and planning and working with your secretary and the parliamentarian to plan for chapter meetings. So none of you just show up. And the committee chairs are important in this role as well, because in order for the president to develop that plan, those are the reports in which the plan is developed from. So before we go to the next, is your recording secretary on this afternoon? Is she present? Do we know? Or if she is, can she say hello?
She is not.
She is not. Is there someone who's wants to take a stab at secretary who has served as a recording secretary in the past? Don't make me call on someone. Let's see.
I
Nobody?
was
All
gonna
right.
say, don't make me call on the people who I know have served
Right.
as recording
Tanya,
secretary.
Tanya, I'm gonna let you, so you can see, you can, yes, what's the question?
Repeat the question.
What's the question? As the second member of the parliamentary team is the secretary, what are the duties and responsibilities of the secretary on this team? And Tanya, feel free to call on someone.
I'm going to ask that the person who has served as recording secretary, and you know who you are, can you please respond to this question? I don't want to have to call your name. Accurate record keeping is what I see typed in the chat.
Okay. All right, good. To ensure accuracy of the meeting minutes. That's correct. Yes. All right. Can you hit the motions are recorded? Yes. That's very important. All right. Can you hit the same next slide button again so the secretary comes up, Tanya, please? There you go. All right. Your secretary sends the meeting notice, and it's very important that the secretary is recording the exact wording of the motions. And so does Quaker City Alumni Chapter, do you use motion sheets, or the poor recording secretary has to, rely on her memory?
Well,
Yes.
so the motion is typed in the committee report, and that's what we've been using.
Okay.
However, we know there are some things that we would like to do more efficiently. So that's why we're here, so that we can all understand, the benefits of doing such. So if we're meeting virtually, if the tech team doesn't have the motion ahead of time, then we have to wait while they create that in order for us to vote. So
yeah, and again, in this virtual world, it's great. Again, as we later on talk about committee reports, it's very important that those reports contain the actual minute, the motion that's going to be presented. Now, what you don't see ahead of you certainly can't, certainly determine ahead of time if whatever amendments are, but at least you start with the basic main motion, and that is to be recorded. The tech team has that. Another tip might be for persons who know they are going to place a motion under new business that's not on the report, that maybe you can think about creating a rule and have them send it in maybe 5 days ahead of time of the meeting, so then you can have those recorded. So that will eliminate the downtime, certainly, because when you have to type in the questions and wait a few moments for that for the box to the poll to populate and be able to show the question. It takes a little time. So that's one tip that you may use. Members who know they're going to have a motion that they would like to present on the new business, and then have them send it in a few days ahead of time, so you have an opportunity. And that's what's really great about having the motions on the report now, because when you leave executive board meeting, you know exactly what the motions are. If there are any action items from that particular chair, the secretary knows, and she is and so both of you are ahead of the game there, along with the tech team. And again, the secretary also assists with voting, and I don't know what role she plays with you on now that we are electronic, but certainly in a chapter meeting, if the president has to count a vote and the body has said that they want a particular vote counted, that the secretary assists with that. Now, if it's a larger group and you need to appoint some persons, you can appoint some persons to assist, but if not, then the secretary assist with that. Parliamentarian, who is your parliamentarian on this afternoon? Is she present?
Sorry, Oliver, are you on?
She is not.
She is not. All right, who can I pick on now? Oh, I know who I saw in the chat. So, Sister McAllister, what's the role of a parliamentarian? You can
Are you able to hear me? I couldn't unmute.
You can unmute, please.
It didn't work.
We hear you.
Yeah, we hear you.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, if I hold down the space button, it'll let me talk. So the role of the parliamentarian is to assist the president, hopefully before the meeting, to go through the agenda and help her to prepare a script to go through. And her role is to, at the meeting, to be available to the president to help her know what the rules are, the parliamentary, that their parliamentary authority brings, and what's in the policies and procedures of the chapter. So if there's a question about it, she should be able to help the president, and she works directly with the president unless the president has asked her to speak.
Thank you, and the last point from Deborah is very important, is that the parliamentarian sits there very quietly, does not engage in conversation with the president or the members unless asked by the presiding officer or the president. Now, certainly the president, and again, it's very important, and one of the comments also was made, is that you want the president and the parliamentarian should have a great working relationship with one another. There should be trust between the two of them, because that may be the one person the president can turn to sometimes and let off a little steam or scream, and knowing that that information is not going anywhere. But they have to trust that in order to make her be the best that she can be in presiding in the meeting for the chapter, that there's a level of trust. And so she can be open and honest, and knowing that they are suggestions, that they are for her benefit and not to be critical or to put her in a bad place a bad spot in front of the membership. So that's one. So the parliamentarian should sit right next to, in person, sits right next to the presiding officer. Certainly now virtually, hopefully the two of you have an opportunity, a way that you communicate with each other, either by text or, you're able to speak to her off with the, make sure that your mic's not on. If you need to consult with her. Tanya, you can, next button, I think the parliamentarian should pop up if you hit it. Yeah, there we go. And again, and the key with the president and the parliamentarian that's really important is that they remain impartial. And that's why the parliamentarian is encouraged and should not vote unless it's a valid vote, because both the president and the parliamentarian can be very persuasive in a meeting, because members will look to them to see, which way they're leaning. And so impartiality is important for both of them. And again, we talked about consulting, and the parliamentarian advises and does not make any rulings. All right, thank you. Good job. Next slide, please. All right, quorum. And I think you got this question correct. You cannot decide on the spot to change your quorum during the course of a meeting. Is that the quorum, and I think one key here, 2 items here to take away, is that the quorum must be maintained throughout the meeting. And so if you are the president or you're the parliamentarian or the secretary and you notice members are leaving, is that you might want to bring that to the attention of the president if she's not aware, because any decisions that you make outside of that, not having a quorum, are not, as we would say, legal decisions, and the group would need to come back and revisit those. And if there isn't a quorum, and I know we tend to we'll sit around, if we're in person, we'll kind of wait a little bit, we'll go through the agenda. And even though the quorum is not present and you discuss some of the items, you've technically had the meeting, but you can't make any binding decisions because a quorum is not present. And so there are really only 3 things you can do, other than get on the phone and try to find out where everyone is and see if they're on their way, is to use the motion to fix the time to which to adjourn, which says we will adjourn this meeting and the same meeting will take place at a different day and time. Or you take a recess, or you adjourn the meeting, period. Or like I say, you get on the phone, you try to find out where everyone is and see if they are able to join the meeting. But the key with the quorum is that it must be maintained throughout the meeting. And then there are those 3 measures you can take if you don't have one. Next slide, please. And this is, as we know, during the course of the meeting, is what I refer to as the SOB, is the standard order of business. And these are the basic components of the standard order of business. You have the reading and approval of minutes, reports of officers, boards, and standing committees, reports of special committees, special orders, unfinished business, general orders, and new business. Typically, what we also use a lot, what you'll see, is also referred to as an agenda. An agenda is a little bit longer and more detailed in length. It may list the specific committees that are going to report. It may have a program that's listed there. Sometimes some groups will also put beside the particular the next item will be the time limit in which that particular chair or that committee will speak. So in addition to the standard order of business, you'll also have the agenda. Next slide, please. And again, this is just we'll take a look at this right quick. You understand the reading and approval of the minutes. Again, I believe the minutes are for most chapters now sent in advance, and so it's up to the members to make sure they read those minutes. So when the president asks for, are there any corrections, they should be able to list the corrections. And and I've seen this happen a couple times. Please don't spend 20 minutes or 10 minutes on the minutes for every comma, period, and quotation mark, or or anything that's grammatical. The president, you may have either a team to look at and review reports maybe before they go out and try to catch some of those things, but only if you're looking for if your name maybe it's misspelled, or if there is indication that you placed a motion on the floor and it wasn't you, that you correct technical things, or the committee, wrong committee. But you don't want to spend a lot of time on style and editing on the approval of the minutes if you possibly can. Next slide, please. And as we spoke about the reports of boards, officers, and committees, most times reports they contain information, or they may have a recommendation or an action item. All right, next slide, please. Reports of special committees. These may be the reports or recommendations or motions or recommendations from a committee that was established during a meeting to look at a particular project that the chapter may want to undertake. They will come back and report at whatever meeting time either the president or the members have directed them to, and this is where you will they will present their report under special committees. Next slide, please. Special orders. Special orders are those things that are established and set that take place at a regular time, I guess on a yearly basis. And I am probably for our chapters, elections would be what will be looked at as a special order, especially if your rules say on April or May or June that the election is taking place. That's a special order. And so it says that those elections must come up at that particular time in May. Next slide, please. Let's see, unfinished business. Okay, unfinished business. Unfinished business is not the continuation of your committee report. So it is not where you reported in September, and if you, and whatever was not stated in September, that you come back in October and it's under unfinished business. No, it remains under your committee reports where the information, that updated information is given. Unfinished business is actually a motion, and the president should never have to ask, is there any unfinished business? Because let's say you met in September and say there was somewhere you left off on the agenda and you didn't complete a particular motion or the meeting adjourned. That's unfinished business. And so under the section of unfinished business or a general order, that means that the meeting prior to, someone said we will take up this particular action, this motion at this meeting. That's what unfinished business is, right? Not the continuation of your committee report. And like I said, and if otherwise, Madam President, if you know that there was no unfinished business, there were no motions that were not carried out at the previous meeting, or there are no general orders, you can just really just leave it off the agenda. And
That was going to be my question. Thank you. That was my question.
And that'll eliminate everybody. So, oh, that's my unfinished business, and they'll go back to whatever report it was that was given the months previous. Next slide, please. New business, and new business, not announcements. New business is actually a motion that someone wants to bring a proposal to the body to discuss and take action on. It's not an announcement. It's not that I missed executive board meeting and Madam President said that I cannot present my report. So I'm gonna either under new business, I'm gonna try to bring it up, or either under announcements, I'm gonna try to bring it up. No, new business is a new proposal for the chapter. Next slide, please. And again, these are just some terms as far as you might see on a standard order of business: adjournment, recess, and standing at ease. Of course, we all know what adjournment is, the close of the meeting. We all look forward to that. If the group must take and wants to take a quick break, a short break, that's recess. And if the president wants the members to take a quick break but stay in place, it's stand at ease. Next slide, please. Okay, adopting agenda. And this is where if you adopt an agenda, it's primarily what you see every month, again, because as we stated, the standard order of business are the basic items of the meeting. But if you have additional, a lot of groups will have their own specific agenda as to the business outline of the business for that day. And so when you enter into the meeting, part of the meeting script is to adopt the agenda as presented. So here's a question. So say the group has adopted the agenda and there's a change to the agenda. How is that handled? Does anybody know? Anyone want to take a stab at that? How would you handle making a change to the agenda after it has been adopted? Well, how do you normally handle that? How's that normally handled?
So when I'm not sure if this is correct, when we present the agenda, I ask if there are any additions to the agenda or I guess changes. So if a committee is not reporting, which I knew from executive board, do I need to again repeat that for chapter meeting that they're not reporting?
Now you're in the ballpark. So if there's a committee that is, as you know, from executive board that's not reporting, you don't put them on agenda. You just don't list all the committees just for the out of habit of listing them. You only want to list those committees that are actually going to report, that have reports to give to the body. And then once you have asked if there are any additions to the agenda, the members adopt the agenda. If you want to make a change to agenda, that has to be voted on. Now, you can certainly go through the process and that will be a 2/3 vote. But again, especially in the virtual world, and here's another tip I will always share with presidents: use unanimous consent as much and frequently as you can. Because most time the members are not going to, be too terribly upset if you say the meeting is taking longer, a committee chair or something happens and they need to maybe move up. And so you just ask the members, do you mind if such and such committee moves ahead? Certainly in the items as they are listed. And most of the times the members they're okay with that. But if you find yourself in a position, you just take the motion and the members will agree, because now you would then be adopting something that you've already, you're amending something you've already adopted. But generally try for unanimous consent and hopefully everybody will agree, and then you can keep moving. Okay, next slide, please. All right, I think we'll just take us to this, because I know I definitely want to get to some of the specific questions that you have. Does anyone have any questions? And we'll just take a couple 60 seconds here. Does anyone have any questions on anything that's been presented thus far that you are not sure about or you want further clarification on?
Hi, Sora Deljua. It's Sora Conley Baker. I have a question.
Hi, how are you? Yeah.
Hi. If you don't have a quorum present, can a committee still give an update since there's not going to be a motion made?
So yes, and I want to try to move you away from using update, because committees are either going to report or not. And so, to give an update, that is your committee report. Now, and I certainly will say, people come out, especially when you're meeting in person. And what you tend to see happen is that the members of the committee chairs will give the report, and while everybody is there. Now, the president can certainly take the strict approach and say, try the 3, processes or options that we discussed earlier, and move the meeting to another time. Or since everyone's there, as you say, Keisha, you hear the updates or the reports, and then you leave knowing that you didn't actually have a meeting. So, again, the one thing you want to know about parliamentary procedure, yes, you want to follow the rules, but you don't want so much that it's so tight that it's restrictive on everyone. But you want to be clear as a president that we met, but we didn't meet, so to speak. We met the requirement of having our monthly meeting, but we didn't meet to where we could make any decisions. And if it was something that was an emergency and there was an emergency item that you needed to give an update and the chat members needed to hear it, then when you return the next month, that information or that decision would have to be ratified. Does that answer your question?
It sure does. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thank you. Any other questions on what we've covered thus far? All right, next slide, please. And we can probably go through these probably a little quickly here. Main motion. I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with the main motion. It's the introduction of business, which means then that, so when you're in a meeting, 20 minutes of conversation, discussion shouldn't precede the motion, because otherwise, what are you discussing? Because it takes the main motion to officially present that item of business before the group. So if there's anything that you want, if there's an issue or proposal you want the members to take action on, the motion should precede the discussion. Next slide, please. And very quickly here, some of the motions are not in order. Let's take a look at, again, those motions that are outside your organization, the organization's purpose. And so, you know, the organization has this 5-point thrust, and you decide that, you know, the thrust of some other organization, the Kennel Club down at the street, you think that's really great. And so you bring it to Quaker City and you think, no, that motion would be out of order. So hopefully the president would notice that. And you wouldn't say the member is out of order, the motion would be out of order. Okay. Or it conflicts with an action that the body has already decided to take, or if you're in the process, if there's some action still in force, a member is out of order for a member to come in and then come behind that and decide to offer another motion that would be that contradict that. Next slide, please. Here's a little pet peeve of mine, and here's because this tends to be where one of the areas where chapter meetings can get a little lengthy and discombobulated and bubbulated, as I like to say. It's not really a word, but this is what happens, is because whoever the member of the committee that is that's placing the motion on the floor, it doesn't contain the necessary information in order for the members to make a decision. And then what happens on the backside of that, the members then vote for this, and they come back the next month and they're like 100 questions because they didn't either send it back to the committee or to have it fully stated before them and have all the information. And so what we like to do is to improve on this. And so if you're either the committee chair or a member and you're placing a motion on the floor, you want it to be concise, clear, and complete as possible, to contain all the information so the members can make a full decision, complete decision. And so as you see here, the difference is I moved to replace the wood shingles on 3 buildings. Let's see, look here, it's high, on 3 buildings with asphalt shingles. Now, what does that say? And so somebody somewhere would say, okay, they would adopt that motion. And then now you get into the discussion, well, how much is it going to cost? You know, what is the time frame for replacing the shingles? And even though it's lengthy, to some people say, well, that's too long. But you're going to spend the time in presenting a concise and clear and complete motion, or you'll spend double the time discussing and the members having to ask the question about, well, when is construction going to begin and what budget is it coming from? So you want to make sure all the information is there. And so I'm going to give you an opportunity to, next slide, please. Take a few minutes. And I don't know, can everyone see the motion? Because I think there's it says, I move that Quaker City hold its annual designer handbag bingo. I want you to take a moment, if you have a sheet of paper or your phone, notes on your phone, is to write out a more concise, clear, and complete motion. So I want you to write out a motion that contains more information, everything that you think that should be completed, be a part of this motion for the members to make a full decision, an informed decision. So I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. Okay, a couple more seconds. All right, let's see. Tanya, can you see if you have a couple people that would like to come on and unmute themselves and read the motions they came up with?
So I see Lynn Bailey has a motion in the chat. And Kalisha Gully has a motion in the chat.
Okay. Would either one of them like to unmute themselves and share it with us?
Hi, this is Lynn.
Hi, Lynn. How are
How
you?
are you? Good, good. So you want me to read?
Yes.
Well,
give us that concise, that more complete motion.
now this is considering that if we could have met in person, but we all know that.
Yes,
So,
right.
so I move that QCA, Quaker City Alumni, hold Designer Purse Bingo on Saturday, November 14th from 5 to 9 p.m. at St. Raymond's at a cost of $30 per ticket.
Excellent. Good job. All right. Good job. Exactly. So there should be no questions asked after that. It included the location, the event, the ticket price, which is also important. And I will stop here to make sure that members and committee chairs remember that they don't decide the price. The members decide the ticket price. And so that's a part of your recommendation to the chapter. Anyone else? Good job, Lynn. Anyone else would like to share?
Thank you.
Hi, this is Kalisha.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Kalisha.
I agree with Lynn.
Good job.
Mine just says, I move that QCA hold its annual Designer Pocketbook Bingo virtually on November 14th from its original in-person event which was previously planned. And I understand what I left out of my concise motion or move, yeah, because I didn't put the time and or the cost of the event.
Right. And so let's pretend, so that was great as well. So let's pretend that that you were see, where was I going with that? Oh, I think it was when I thought I heard you say that that was previously
planned for
in person. All right, so that moves it into a whole nother category, is that you would then still make a motion, but you wouldn't have to be at, well, I mean, let me rephrase that. What you've now, if you are moving from making a decision outside of what you originally decided to do, you're going to amend something that, you know, you've already decided to do, or you some parts of that. And so you would then, all you would have to do is insert what the difference would be. But the other part, the second part of your questions was, yes, you want to make sure that those items were included in there as well. So hopefully that made sense to you. So once, you know, if you decided to have the event virtually and you decided to make any changes, the changes would be what the membership, the body would then come back and agree on. but you want to make sure they were all included as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yeah, good job. Thank you. Next slide, please. See if we get through these really quickly here. Again, you know, there's 6 steps in handling emotion, and which is, you know, important. Certainly after you wait for the recognition from the presiding officer, she calls on you. And next slide, please. Which I think actually shows will take us to the steps. Yeah, so the 6 steps, a member makes the motion, another member seconds the motion, the chair states the motion. And what this means is that, and that's why it's important for the secretary's record keeping to be accurate, because if the president may have forgotten, you know, after some time as to what actually the motion is at that moment, then, you know, she's able to help her with that. So the chair states the exact same motion that the member placed. The chair makes a debate, so the members debate the motion. And so this is where you have an opportunity, the pros and cons. I don't like it. I think we should change it. We want to do something different. And so we have the debate. The chair puts the question to a vote, which is then she is restating the question to the members, because you spend some time debating. She brings everyone back to the place where this is, so everyone is on the same page as to what is on the floor. And so she puts the question to the members. She takes the vote. All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. And then she will certainly make the complete announcement of the vote. Was it adopted? Did it pass? And what was the effect of that? So those are the 6 steps in handling a motion. Next slide, please. Debate. And here's where the fun starts, is during debate. Once the motion is placed on the floor, this is where a lot of times it can get heated, and, you know, personalities can get in the way, and persons, you know, and some feelings can get hurt sometimes. And so we want to make sure, next slide, please, that as we look at debate, that there are some rules that we want to try to follow during debate, so that everyone has an opportunity to share and to give her opinion, so that one particular group of members are not hogging the debate time. So members are only allowed to speak twice on a motion. And now the asterisk is there because as a chapter, you may have rules differently that say the member may only be able to speak once, or you may give them more opportunities to speak on a particular motion. That doesn't mean for the day, that just means for that particular motion. So I don't know if you have rules outside of that. Tanya, do you know if Quaker City has a rules on debate outside of speaking on a motion twice?
We do not.
You do not. All right. So members are allowed to speak twice. What about motions not exceeding 10 minutes? Do you have a rule that's less than that, or you go to 10 minutes, or you just go? You just keep going.
From what I can remember, we do not have any specific rules around that. Yeah, I think we just kind of just go until somebody's sick of it, and then they call for the previous.
So that might be something that the chapter think about as an action item next time you review your rules, is to address. Otherwise, just think about it. If everyone gave a speech for 10 minutes, I don't know. I guess I didn't ask this question. So are you a chapter meeting for like 5 hours then? If every time there's a motion on the floor, every speech can go, if every person can speak for 10 minutes, or is it usually less than that? Not to put you on the spot. What happened to the president? Where did y'all go?
A lot of competing noise. So the meetings have been at times lengthy, and we are working to move to better adherence to Robert's Rules of Order so that our meetings can be shorter. Our September meeting actually was probably the shortest that we've had in a while, because we really tried to stick to what Robert's rules said with regard to committees reporting and things like that.
So how long was September meeting, may I ask?
An hour and 30 or hour and 40 minutes.
Okay, and so that was one of the, you say one of the shortest you've had for normally?
I believe so, yes.
Good job, that's improvement, yes. So if you continue to help that, again, is during debate, or even before you even open up for members to change that, is that you may look at establishing a rule that says speeches are not to exceed whatever minutes, but 10 minutes is a long time for one particular person to be able to stand up and speak in debate. Now, if you're okay with that, that's fine. Don't let me persuade you. But
I think that if we pay closer attention to the last four that you have there.
Okie dokie. All right, we'll skip down to the last four. See, 1, 2, 3. One, it must be germane, so that's important. So again, we're not having a discussion about the business down the street as opposed to what's taking on there. We talked about the chair alternating, and this is also important during debate. Again, this keeps, this is to eliminate members, getting back and forth in personal issues. Is that all questions and all comments should be directed through and to the chair. Now, the chair can certainly turn to the committee chair or the officer and ask her to respond, but it is through the chair, it is to the chair, and when you're speaking to members, it is not calling them by their first name or any other name that you might want to call them at that particular moment. So you want to avoid that as well. But you refer to their titles and refer to them by name or by the office. So I think that's the last one. So you want to avoid using name that refers to officers again. So those are just two things. If, take a look at that as far as your limit on debate. Next slide, please. Okay, can you just keep, till it all comes, to the entire slide comes up. All right. And again, to assist you, again, as we're around on debate, is when you want to establish some controls around debate, is that the members can decide to, well, before we get there, limit or extend limits of debate. These are the standard characteristics of that, is that it can't interrupt the speaker, requires a second. It can be amended, and it's 2/3 vote to adopt it. And the reason for the 2/3 vote, anybody know why? It takes a 2/3 vote to adopt a limit or extend limits of debate, as opposed to majority. Anybody, any guess? Any takers, Tanya? No takers. All right. The reason that limit or extend the limits of debate, and as well as a couple other motions, are 2/3 vote as opposed to majority, is, remember, we talked about parliamentary procedure. Members have rights. And so if you're going to limit the ability to speak, it takes a higher vote to approve to do that. So that's why it's 2/3. Next slide, please. Okay, these are just some examples of limiting or extending the limits of debate. You can move to extend the time. So again, if you want to increase the time from 10 minutes to 15 minutes, you can do that. If you want to put a specific time as to when debate must end, you can do that as well. And you can also, it can be a combination of both. You can extend the number of times a member can speak, as well as the length of the speech. Next slide, please. Okay, seeing previous, okay, next one we can, those are standard characteristics for previous question. And then previous question closes debate immediately. And as you see there, the proper way to close debate is not stand up and yell question, as you will have some people do. And I hope that the president looks at you and just looks at you, because she probably should not be sure as to what it is that you are asking. But the correct way to end debate is I move the previous question, and generally on the motion too. Do whatever, because if there's if you have more than one motion that is pending, or you're processing several motions, if you're not specific as to which one, then it shuts down debate on all of them. So and these are just as chapter members, these are, as I want to say, you want to put in your having your arsenal as far as a member. We're probably, while you're sitting there texting during the meeting, make sure you're paying attention, because instead of sitting in a meeting that's taking 3 hours and you have a group that's debating for 20 minutes on the subject, they're saying and repeating the same information twice, is that move for the previous question. So that's your role as chapter members, is either to extend the debate if you are limited debate, or you can certainly, end debate by asking for the previous question, and that shuts down debate immediately. And the presiding officer must move directly to the taking the vote. Next slide, please.
Before we go on, we have a
Sure.
question. Can you make a motion to limit a debate while there is still a motion on the floor? Wouldn't
Yes.
that be more than one motion on the floor?
No, it will, and we'll get to that. Actually, I'm trying to rush through this now. We'll get to that. So when we take a look at the order of proceedings and the list of motions, we'll see that. All right. Where are we now? On voting. All right, next slide, please. Just remember, as a chapter member, you have rights and responsibilities too, and as far as voting is concerned, it is your right to vote, but you can't be forced to vote. You can vote for yourself, you know, and if anything, as I mentioned earlier, is going to change or impede upon your rights as a member, that requires a 2/3 vote. And you do have an opportunity to change your vote before the vote is announced by the presiding officer. Next slide, please. Again, we talked about this again around with the parliamentarian and the presiding officer participating in the vote. They want to make sure they remain impartial. They vote primarily when it's by ballot, and for the chair, if that vote is going to make a decision in the outcome and she chooses to vote, she can do so, okay? So just because it's a tie and everybody's looking at the presiding officer and expecting her to break the tie, she doesn't have to. She doesn't have to. But so it's a lot of people think that they require the presiding officer to vote because it is a tie. But it's only when the decision and she decides to, and it will make a difference in the outcome. Next slide, please. We talked about majority and 2/3. Next slide. Again, here are some of the basic methods of, most common methods of voting is by voice, is the regular method of voting. Rising, there's a typo, I didn't catch it 3 o'clock this morning. So it's if the members are unsure after a voice vote, whether the presiding officer may say it was adopted or not, they're not sure, they can certainly stand and call for division, and then the presiding officer would take a rising vote. And then the other common method is when there's secrecy, when members would want the vote to be taken in secret. We all know and familiar with the form of balloting. Next slide, please. We talked about unanimous consent earlier, is the adoption of a motion without going through the motion process. And certainly in this virtual world, I would suggest to every presiding officer, unless there are rules otherwise, to use unanimous consent. And you know, put the members in a position where if they oppose, that they certainly stay, but if there's no objection, especially around the agenda and minutes and those items that you pretty much know that members are not going to have any issues with, use unanimous consent because it saves time. Next slide, please. It's a sample of a ballot, which we're all familiar with. We'll skip this one too, because I want to get to, next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so there are 5 basic classes of motion: main motions, subsidiary motions, privilege motions, incidental motions, and motions that bring business again before the assembly. Those are the 5 classes of motions. Next slide. The subsidiary, privilege, and incidental motions also make up the category of secondary motions. And this goes to the question that was asked earlier about the 2 items being on the floor at a time. So you can have the main motion, but either subsidiary, privilege, incidental motions can also be made to help process that. So you begin with one main motion, but you're perfecting it and changing it along the way until you make a final decision. And so that's how you can have a main motion on the floor be in debate, and then someone can say, I move to limit debate to 10 minutes as opposed to 15 minutes. You're still processing the same main motion, the same subject is on the floor. So these are just ways to deal with that. You're welcome. Next slide, please. And these are a list of the motions that have that fit into those classes that are ranked from high to low. As you can see, the main motion is the absolute lowest motion of the ranked motions, and fix the time to which to adjourn is the highest. And you probably see a few of those, hopefully, that you may have been familiar with, we discussed earlier. And so this is what's also referred to as the order of precedence. And so if you're in a meeting and the main motion's on the floor, and a member moves to limit or extend limits of debate, she can do that. Because the higher up you go on the chart, you can place that motion on the floor. So you work your way up when you are placing items on the floor, and you work your way down when it's time to vote for them. So an example would be, so the motion to postpone, so let's say the motion to commit or refer is on the table, on the floor. And the mover stands to move the motion to postpone indefinitely. Can she do that? Because, so commit or refer is on the floor, and can a member then introduce the motion to postpone indefinitely? Just give it a shot. True or false? Yes or no? You think, yeah? Any take it? What do you think? No? Exactly. You cannot, because as I say, you work your way up in the order of proceedings. So anything above commit or refer, the member could make. But anything below commit or refer, the member could not. So that's as most complicated as we're going to deal with that today, because it is. But it's good for you to understand and know that. So as a member, whatever motion is on the floor, you know, and the presiding officer know, is it in order to make that motion at that time? Next slide, please. Okay, main motion, we've discussed this. We know that brings business before the assembly. Next slide, we're going to just flip through these. All right, postpone indefinitely. Okay, we know what this one is. It's used to kill it for the current session. We want to reject the main motion. We don't want to discuss it. So someone will say in postpone, a member will make the motion to postpone indefinitely. And what that does, that's it. It kills it for that session. Next slide, please. The motion to amend. Number 3, you use this motion if you want to change a wording of a motion. And we're going to go into more detail on amend in just a moment. Next slide, please. Commit or refer. Again, when you're in meetings and you're in the chapter meeting and you're sitting there as a member, and it's very clear that the member or the committee chair, the motion that they presented does not include all the information that should be included, and you're sitting there trying to have committee meeting during chapter meeting, send that motion back to the committee and have them come back the next month or preceding month, after some further study and recommendation, and bring back a recommendation to the group. Next slide, please. Number 5 is postpone to a certain time. This motion is used to postpone a motion until later on in the meeting, or no later than the next meeting. It gives it a specific time. So as opposed to postpone indefinitely, where you never want to see it again, this would be where I move to postpone the motion until 5 o'clock or to the next meeting. Next slide, please. Previous question we discussed, that's used to close debate immediately. Next slide, please. Limit or extend limits of debate. We talked about that. If you want to change the rules of debate, you would use the motion to limit or extend the limits of debate. Next slide. Lay on the table. And I would say this one is probably one of the ones that's misused the most, because people think laying on the table, they tend to use lay on the table as you would postpone indefinitely. So they think they place it on the table, it never comes back. But actually it's a temporary motion, it's temporarily placed on the table. It goes to the secretary's table and you must remove it no later than the next meeting if it happens in a quarterly time period, or it will die and have to be brought back again, but it goes to the secretary's table. And it means that you need to take up something at that particular moment that is of importance. Next slide, please. Call for the orders of the day. This is the president. She forgot where she is on the agenda and she skips over a couple items. And so you can let her know and call for orders of the day to get her back on track. Next slide, please. Let's say number 10, raise a question of privilege. And we tend to be pretty familiar with this. It's usually when the member says either too much noise or the room is cold. I don't know if too much, you probably use this much now doing being virtual. So everybody's in control of her own temperature. So that's when if it's, the room is cold or there's too much noise, you just certainly raise a question of privilege, and the president, the presiding officer makes a decision on that. Next slide, please. Okay, recess, we talked about, that's a short break. Next slide, please. The next, number 12 on the list is adjourn. We all are familiar with that. That's when you want the meeting to close and end and you're ready to go. And number 13 is fix the time to which to adjourn. And this is the motion that allows a group to set a time to complete the agenda, complete the business on another day without adjourning the meeting. All right, next slide, please. All right, so amend, and I'm trying to figure out, virtually how we do this. And I know this tends to be a little problematic for groups sometimes, exactly how to amend or make a change in the main motion. And again, the motion to amend requires a second. It can be debated, it is amendable, and it's takes a majority vote to adopt it. Next slide, please. And so amendments are applied directly to the main motion. So you have a motion on the floor and you said, I could vote for this, but if I could just tweak it a little bit here or make this change, that's when you would use the motion to amend. Then that's a primary amendment. You can also amend the primary amendment to the second degree, but what's not allowed is an amendment to the amendment to the amendment. So anytime that, or if you're familiar and you've seen this process, it can be quite confusing when the motion to amend is on the floor. And so to have three, changes to the main motion, you are not allowed. And so what you would just suggest is that they vote down and then come back and then present another amendment. And what tends to be what causes, what I'll say here is that with the motion to amend, when the members vote to make the change, they think that's the end of the process, but actually it's a two-step process. The members must first agree to make the change and then approve the change that was made. So, so you say, I move the Quaker City have its designer handbag bingo on October the 10th. And someone moves to amend, no, I want to strike out October 10th and insert November the 10th. And that is adopted and the membership adopts that. It doesn't stop there. You now have a new motion. So now the main motion becomes Quaker City will host this annual designer bag bingo on November the 10th. But then now that can be amended again too. So the process continues. Next slide, please. And when making changes to amendments, there are three ways to do that. It's either insert words or place or add words at the end, strike out words, or strike out insert. It's not the member stands up and gives this whole paragraph about why I don't like what's there and I think it should read this way. If you want to make the change, you want to specifically say, I'm either inserting words between two words or phrases, or I'm adding words at the end, or I'm going to strike out words, or I'm going to strike out words and insert words. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. We're trying to get to, just kind of keep the time here, strike out. Okay, next slide. Those are just examples of how to strike out and insert words, but next slide, amending amendments. Okay, I think we talked about that. There are primary and secondary amendments. Okay, changing our minds. So if you want to change your mind in the meeting and you want to say the group has made a decision, next slide, Tanya. So you can use a motion to reconsider or rescind. And the keys here is with reconsider that the motion must be made by someone who voted on the prevailing side. So if you move to reconsider, it must be done in that meeting. It takes a majority vote, it is amendable, it is debatable, and it must be seconded, but it's during the course of that meeting. And the prevailing side is the winning side, whether you voted no or whether you voted for it, whichever side is the winning side. Next slide, please. And again, if you were to rescind or amend something previously adopted, there's another option that's available to you. If the group changes its mind and it's been longer than the next meeting, you can amend, you can rescind it and do away with it altogether, provided again that you have not taken any steps to carry out the action that was already voted on or approved by the membership. Or you can amend parts of it and that have not been executed. All right, next slide, please. Let's see where we are. Next slide. Those are all examples. Renewal is basically, it's too late for you to reconsider. You just come back to next meeting and place the motion on the floor again. All right, next slide. Okay, we talked about, again, postponing and referring to a committee. Again, next slide, please. If you're in the meeting and you want to postpone to a certain time, as we said earlier, I move to postpone the motion until 3 p.m. It takes a majority vote, but it cannot go beyond the next meeting. Next slide. Commit or refer. We discussed that a little bit already about sending items that need more work to the committee, back to the committee. All right, next slide. And that's how you would make the referral, is I move to refer the motion to either a committee that's already established in your groups, in the group's rules, or there's a motion that establishes the committee, that creates the committee, and then the members create the number of persons who are on that committee and when they must report back. Next slide, please. How rules are enforced, and you may be familiar with a couple of these. Point of order, appeal, suspend the rules, and parliamentary inquiry. Point of order, again, if the meeting's taking place and you think that there's a parliamentary issue that's not correct on the floor, then you bring that attention to the president by stating point of order, and the president decides if indeed it is a point of order, if it's well taken. Otherwise, she'll say it's not well taken, and you sit down unless you want to appeal her decision. So, all right, next slide, please. All right, that's point of order. Next slide. That's just how it's stated. Appeal. Appeal is interesting. We don't see this much, but if the group decides that if someone does not agree with the decision or the ruling of the presiding officer, they can appeal. And this is where the group then makes the decision, not the chair, makes the final decision of whether the decision stands or not. Next slide. Okay. Next slide. We're gonna keep going here. Suspend the rules. I'm sure you are. Have you had opportunity, or have you had an opportunity, or do you use, or have you used suspend the rules in Quaker City for any particular reason? Yeah. And when, if you don't mind, if it was something you don't mind sharing, what's an example of a rule that you had to suspend?
Well, so in nominating, I saw nominating in the chat when we didn't have candidates who fit the requirements stated in our policies and procedures.
Okay.
We did refer to the national, I guess, scholarship and standards.
Mm-hmm.
We were told that we had to stay within our rules, but we could look to change them at the next revision. And because our rules also say if you don't have anyone to fit the position, then the president appoints with it has to be approved by the regional director though. So is that why we couldn't suspend that rule, because we have that statement in there? Or that's walking a thin line?
Madam President.
I know. Well, let's say hypothetically.
I will say this. Today's presentation is about parliamentary procedure and the way it should correctly be done. From a parliamentary standpoint, there's some issues there, but I won't belabor those. In normal circumstances, what you should be able to do, and again, the rules of an organization or a group are their rules, and they can decide what they suspend and don't suspend, unless there is a written rule and a higher authority that says that you cannot suspend a particular rule. But the motion to suspend, and you want to be careful with that too, because again, no one should be with the parliamentary authority or anything else that's just like saying that, okay, I don't like Matthew, whatever it is, 16, I'm gonna change all of Matthew 16 because to my liking. So that's why you identify the parliamentary authority. You can create a rule within that, but you want to be able is that you don't want to remove from the group the ability to change its rules, because you could end up in a situation where you really have to, it's important and it's necessary in an emergency, you have to make a change. And without the ability to do that, then you're stuck. And so it's really no one else's in the parliamentary world and in understanding. They can tell you how you need to make that change because it's your group and that's your situation. So I'll just leave that right there and just next slide,
Thank
please.
you. And I like at that bottom, it says that you need to be specific when you do
Yes, you want to be specific. Yes, so you want to be specific about what it is you want. I move to suspend the rule that whatever that rule might be.
Right.
And then what you would say is just to say if it was whatever the issue was around the nominating that you didn't meet, is that I move to suspend the rule, whatever it was you didn't meet, and that allows you to then be able to do what it is. And what this allows you to do, allows you to do what you couldn't do with the rule in place. And sometimes that's necessary. All right, next slide, please.
And I know it's
Yeah.
with some hesitancy because members were thinking that if you get in a habit of suspending rules, that would be, I guess, maybe applied to all rules. So I'm glad to see that bottom part where it has to be specific.
Well, and I would say to everyone that's here, and you can certainly include this, answer and respond in the chat is what do you think would be the answer to that? So if you find yourselves where you're having to suspend a rule frequently, what should you do? What should you do? So you can either you can post it in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, you can certainly respond.
Work to change the rule.
Exactly, work to change the rule. So it makes a lot more sense to work to change the rule than always finding yourselves having to suspend the rule, because having to suspend the rule says, nah, this rule is not working for us. And so we need to do something differently. Yeah, look at revision, absolutely. All right, parliamentary inquiry. Again, that's just if you have a question about what the parliamentary issue is on the floor. Next slide. Next slide. I'm gonna go through several, okay, keep going, Tanya, until I say stop. Okay, we're getting there now. Stop. We got there a little bit faster than I thought. So I want to get to where we do some talking about boards and committees, and I think you've already had some conversations on standing committees and what's those, standing and special committees. All right, we can actually go next slide then. Next slide. Okay, yes, go to committees. All right. So the importance of committees, and so all of you certainly know the importance of a committee. You know what your job and responsibilities, are as a committee chair. And I would say, as far from a parliamentary standpoint, the committees are the key and the heartbeat of any group or organization, because that's where the work is done. And so you want to make sure as the committee chair that you too, or committee members as well, that you understand and are familiar with the rules of the organization, that you know exactly what your duties and responsibilities are as the committee chair. If it's not clear, certainly ask the president. I don't know in your rules, I'm assuming, and I may be mistaken, in that your rules give the president the power to appoint committee members. That correct? Yeah, you appoint committee members, Madam President? Yes, no, yes. Right, so, and it's to appoint committee members and committee chairs. And even though you may have a sign-up sheet, that's great, that gives her an opportunity to know who's interested, she still may appoint someone to a committee that may not have signed up for that. But it's hopefully, she's had a conversation with them and you've taken the time to try to get to understand where their skill sets are before they're being appointed, and to find out if it's somewhere they really want to serve too. Because if they don't, then they're not going to do a good job. And so committees are, again, the heartbeat and the soul of what makes the organization run. Committees can also themselves appoint subcommittees. The rules are a little more relaxed in a committee meeting than they are in the chapter, in a group assembly, in a larger group meeting. But you want to make sure someone is there taking minutes and taking notes and creating a report, because that's the history of the committee. And so when the chair that follows you is in place, she'll have some idea as to what as one of my favorite past presidents would say, the historicity of what you have certainly done as a committee. Next slide, please. And so you talked about standing committees and special committees. You already had that as well. Next slide, please. Standing and special. Next slide. Keep going all through the standing and special committee. Oh, committee reports. And here's where we're going to back up. Can you back up one, please, Tanya? It's talking about committee reports. And And for the chairs that are on, I know, and it's a little difficult here virtually, and I will send the president a form that you certainly may be able to use. But I just want to spend some time here talking about, and you know, hopefully, you know, feel free to unmute and get your questions answered, and let's have a discussion about where you are as far as committee reporting, the reporting committees, what seems to be maybe some of the issues. Because I've heard you say a couple times it tends to be lengthy, you know, times when giving those reports, or there is something that's a custom that you, which I was interested in. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that as far as what takes place certain times with your committee reports. But again, as I, you know, just as I stated earlier, you know, the committee's responsibility again is to do the legwork, and the committee is reporting the findings to the assembly. The chair gives a report, or someone that she designates to do so if she cannot be present. And so it's very important when you are writing those reports that they are clear as with the motion and brief, and are written in the third person. And so I will say I recently worked with a chapter, and this may be a suggestion to maybe once I send you the form, you have a better idea what we're referring to, but the president established we have like a parliamentary style editing. Well, now I just told you we, so I try not to say we. So now I just put the cat out of the bag. It's like we, right? So parliamentary.
Someone has it. Someone has that.
Someone has that editing team. And so before the reports that are due, there's a specific date set the reports are due prior to executive board. The team reviews those reports. They are then sent back to the chair if there are any changes that need to be made. And then after that, they're placed in the drive. So when it's time for the meeting, they're there and they're available for everyone to review. And so what that does is that the report is, they state, because even though you may have in your head sometimes what it is you want to say, when you're standing before the group or you're present, you may, you know, lose focus, you may miss a point. And especially if you have action items, you want to make sure those action items are then listed, written out on the committee report, so they're very clear. So what the group does is make sure the motions are, you know, phrased correctly, and if there's any style editing that needs to take place. And if everything is good, the chair is good. And here's the other part of that. So now you also remove another reporting date for the report to be given. So there was an executive board reporting date, a chapter meeting reporting date. Because chapter meeting, the members should hear the same report that the chair gave in chapter meeting, correct? So if it's good for executive board, why do I need this other reporting date? So, you know, they were excited about that because, you know, we can, and so that removed another level of responsibility or something else the group had to do prior to the meeting. And then you know, the tech team does whatever it needs to do. They are able then to have plenty of time to create if there are motions that need to be created for the poll, they have opportunity to do that. And so it also helps the committee chair deliver the report. Again, as I stated, so she's clear, she's reading the information, and so I certainly found that takes a lot of time, removes a lot of unnecessary time to spend in a committee meeting. And so that improved that tremendously. As you know, committee reports, if they are presented on behalf of the committee, they don't require a second. And that means you had a committee meeting when you just decided to meet by yourself, even though there can be a committee of one, but you didn't make this decision by yourself as the chair and try to pass it off as a committee decision. Because one thing that, you know, one of the slides we went through is that as the committee meets, the actions must be, in order to be valid and be presented to the group, the committee must have agreed on them. So that means that you've called all the committee chairs. And I know Sister so-and-so may come and she may be disruptive, but if she's on a committee and the president appointed her, you gotta call her into the meeting. Now, if that continues to be an issue, you follow up with the president, but you do your due diligence as a committee chair and call her. So that means your members were present, you call the meetings, and don't just have meetings to have meetings for the sake of having a meeting. You know, just like you're required to have reports for executive board meeting, you should have a plan for your committee meetings as well. And so members don't come and they're not wasting time, especially now in this virtual world where this is all we do all day long. You want to make sure the time that the member is spending is certainly worthwhile and beneficial and it's not wasted. So you as a committee chair, you should have a plan and be able to carry that out with the committee members. And if you don't need to meet, for goodness sake, don't meet. Just, next slide, please. Oh, well, we can stay on the committee reports for a while. So here's where we'll, can you back up one more? Sorry, Tanya. Thank you. So let's have a conversation. The president can jump in, any committee chairs that are on the call this afternoon, or just even, committee members who maybe have any questions or concerns about how committee reports are presented, what you observe in your meetings, how can you make some changes to improve that. We'll just open the floor for that discussion now. Or nobody's gonna say anything now.
I mean, I was trying to wait for someone else, but so you're saying that you said there's a format you have for committee reports?
Yes.
And that we could possibly have like a parliamentary team and the reports would be submitted to them and looked over for editing and then given back to the committee chairs. And then there will be no need to do an additional reporting for chapter meeting.
Right. So again, like I said, the team, again, and the reason for that is certainly, having someone who, first of all, it helps, that understands parliamentary procedure, first of all, and understands how well-written motions should be written and how they should be, presented from the committee. Is making sure the report, we try to eliminate or reports that are not written in third person. It's like, we decided this and we talked about this, and all of, just helping them be able to write cleaner, briefer reports. And the hope is that, after a couple months or so, then, that assistance will be needed less and less, which is at the end of the day is what you want. But once that report has been approved, is good to go, it's presented to executive board, nothing comes out of executive board where they either need to have some additional work. The report is put in a drive and it's already there, and the president is then able to move ahead. And so you have both agendas for both meetings, and your committee chairs now don't say, oh my God, it's like Monday night, or it's like 5 o'clock. I have to submit the committee report by 9 o'clock tonight. I haven't written it yet. There's no need to do that. So that's taken off the table. And so, you can just design and develop that if it's something you choose to do that works best for Quaker City.
That would be good. The source who are on the call in the chat, do you think that's something you will be interested in? I know we have quite a few chairs on the call. People there behind.
Yeah, I know. Some chairs, and also, here's the time if you have some, just any concerns you might have or just questions you have as a committee chair, just in general, we can, spend some time on this right now. Because again, this is the heart and the heartbeat of any group. And so you want to make sure that this is handled well. No questions. So that means you don't get any questions, any feedback on anything is what I'm understanding. So, Madam President, which I know is not the case, right? I'm sure that is not the case.
I'm about to do like school. Is anybody behind those pictures?
We're watching the Eagles game.
I call it the chat check-in with my students. No, I said, put your name in the chat. Let me know your name.
Yeah, like they did yesterday, but they answer all those questions and make sure we roll on for like all day. Yeah, it sounds like it though.
All right,
So-
I have a question. Well, not a question, just to make sure I understand the possible new procedure for submitting reports. So are you suggesting, or maybe, I just want to understand the process to see whether or not that would be something that we should move towards. So if I submit my report and the committee will review it and I misspelled the word or something, then you will submit it back to me, then I will make the corrections and then submit it again?
Yeah, I mean, well, see, it's probably not that much back and forth because in the group is trying to, maybe it's probably the first or second time with this one particular group. And so what the committee does is made it, certainly made the changes, submitted it back to give the committee chair an opportunity to use it as a guide for how, for the next month's report. And so it wasn't a lot of, misspelled words. It was primarily just how it was written. Because again, reports are supposed to be written in third person. So it was a lot of, we decided this, and we talked about changing this, and because the COVID is here, we're not going to do all that. So all that you don't need in the committee report. So it was streamlined and so on, sent back to them. And one of the things you'll see the sample I'll send the president is then the committee chair should sign the report. So if it was, and this is something that they had not been in the habit of doing, because again, these reports go into the minutes, they go into the book, they're official record of the chapter. So the chair signs it unless, all the committee members choose to do so as well. And so that's on the report. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the process as to how that has been executed thus far. So it sounds like it's a lot of more work than it is, because on the chair, it's very little work. Who is the work on is the team that's doing, the revisions and actually doing the follow-up work. So because then they're looking and reviewing every committee chair's report. Again, once those are, once they get into the habit of how to present and write a report, that becomes less and less of time consuming issue. So I don't know, did I answer your question to help you a little bit better understand?
Yes, it did. Yeah.
And again, the main thing that we really are looking for is, especially if they're action items and if the motion is written, this spelled out correctly and written correctly, or if it's not in the report, it's something where, wait a minute, this is really something the chapter needs to decide, because again, committee chairs, can sometimes, as we talked about, they forget that they are gathering their facts and not making a decision. So they'll come and say, well, this is what we decided to do, and it's like it's a done deal. And if it's something that is not maybe adopted with your PPD in May or June, then the members need to come before the members and get permission to do that. So it's looking for, little things like that, which requires the committee then too now to stay on its toes to make sure they know what's in the budget items or what has been adopted, and they have it at their fingertips as well. So
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Deldra, with this is Tanya. I know just hearing it, I'm sure everybody is or a lot of people are probably thinking like, oh my gosh, that sounds like so much added work and so much back and forth. But I think once, if a committee is putting the report together based on the format that you mentioned, then I don't think it's going to be as much back and forth as it might be perceived right now.
It sounds like it's more back and forth than what it was. Like I said, it was reviewed. The few that went back, they were just said, okay, either sign this or, include your next meeting date, because then whatever the recommendations were on cleaning up how it was written, nobody disagreed with it. So that was it. So if they didn't need to sign it or the next meeting day was included, that was it. So it may be a one-time, if there was something to correct or something that needed to be addressed, it was a one-time deal. So for those little small items like either signing it or including the next meeting date, or they now have a template. So if they follow that template, there's probably who it would be less work on now will be the committee as opposed to the chair. So because the suggestion didn't go back to the chair, so now you rewrite the report and then send it back. No, it was, here's a report, we're good, send it back, went to the drive. Yeah. So but surprisingly, it seemed to have worked well, and people will really appreciate it because again, it helped them in delivering their report. And you could hear in their voices more confidence from the committee chair. It wasn't the rambling, trying to figure out, what am I focusing on? And so they use it as a template. It's not to take away the personality of the chair or it has to be read verbatim, but it gives you those key points on what you want to cover, any action items that need to take place, or there's a statement there that says no action for information only. And that was it, and that's the end of it. Primarily it's a template to keep you on track when you're delivering your report. So I know it's probably, yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
With the group that this was done with, what has their meeting time been averaging?
Oh goodness, especially since we've been in COVID, be in and out of chapter meeting in about an hour.
What'd you say?
An hour. The longest it's been an hour 15.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And the first time with executive board meeting probably was a little bit longer just because, you know, explaining the process and introducing the process and, you know, and so I think there was the group, the one report, and most of the reports are one page. Because you think about a lot of what you say and talk about, it's just like a little extra fluff stuff. So, you know, and it was on one page. The only report that kind of probably went over again because of the climate that we're in was social action. So you kind of give them a little leeway. Things changed a lot there. But otherwise, it was there, in and out of the meeting, an hour. Done. Done. Hour. Yes, ma'am. Wonderful thing. So if anybody wants to stay on, go get your lunch and have a beverage or drink or whatever, you have an opportunity to do that. It's opposed to being angry mad because you've been on for 4 hours. Just, you know, and I guess the question would be is, you know, as you alluded to, they tend to be alone. What do you think is some of the main reasons why or issues that creates I'm answering the question, but that creates the, shall we say, the lengthy meeting and causes the meetings to be a bit longer than you think they should be? Or what are some areas that you have identified that you really think the group needs to work on?
I think the fluff, yes, too much discussion.
Too much discussion.
Fluff.
Yeah, too much.
And not in the discussion, not following Robert's rules. So if we follow Robert's rules with the discussion, it wouldn't be the extra fluff, which takes the extra time.
We'll see what rules in particular around Roberts are you talking about? A flushing time? Are you talking about because Roberts right now, without you having a rule for debate, is 10 minutes per each member that speaks. So that's a long time right there.
Not necessarily the discussion being like the pro and the against, the for and the against.
Mm-hmm.
The discussion tends not to be germane to the topic.
Yes, that's true too.
The proper terminology, it's not germane to the topic all the time.
Okay. And so then how do you change? So what steps would you take, put into place, initiate to change that then? What would be you leave this workshop, and so what are the one action items that Quaker City is going to take, primarily Madam President, that you listed as to what you would either do or you would have the members suggest that you do?
We were hoping we were glad to have the workshop so that we could help sorors understand how the process goes, and hopefully that would make them be, you know, more responsive.
Right, because in debate, you should only be discussing what is on the floor at that night. And again, that's what I said. We're not talking about the kennel down the street and why they got the dogs running around everywhere. That has nothing to do with what's happening in QCA at that moment. Right. And that's all the part of making sure that how the reports are written in the first place. Is having a rule that says this is what the debate limit is. But until you get there, every member on here that's not a committee chair delivering the report, or an officer that primarily is presiding officer, the only one that's having this discussion, you now as a member understand you have tools as well. You know how to end debate. Okay, you learn previous, as we talked about earlier, you should be able to walk away from here with two motions today that you may not have known how to process or even heard of before. So now you know you can limit. We don't want to extend debate. We're not trying to do that here. So really, it's about limiting the debate. So you now know that's an option. That's a possibility to do that. And so, or you can certainly, if the committee has not, they're reporting, you understand there's way too many holes in this. Looking like the Patriots coach with his moth-eaten, sweatshirt he had on the press conference the other day. Way too many holes in this report. Why are we sitting there? Because then when you do that, you now open up the floor. You've opened it up for that level of type of discussion. So now you send it back to committee instead of sitting there for 20 minutes, helping the committee do his work. Because I guarantee you don't want to go into the committee of the whole. You don't want to have any consideration to handle that issue for that committee. That's that committee's responsibility. Send it back to them, have them come back. So that's 20 minutes that you did. So you're probably getting close to under 2 hours now if you just enact those three things, And so, but again, and as the presiding officer, you can't be afraid. Now, I understand, been there, done it. Folk will get mad at you, but you're like, love you anyway, you keep it moving. But you're going to have more be angry with you because they're sitting there and they're not using the time efficiently and they're angry. And so, you want to make sure that again, now, as you looked at, we talked about parliamentary procedure, the rights of every member. So why should the majority sit through 3 hours with something that you could have taken care of and solved in an hour, hour and a half time? You know, for these meetings now virtually, only reason you should have a meeting this long is if you were, I guess, you had several items in your rules to amend or something like that, or there was a major issue. You know, you always have to have, every committee does not have to report the same information month after month. Just to, you know, some items can be in your newsletter as updates, as Sister Connolly just said. What actually is an update? If you reminded people to show up on Tuesday at 5 o'clock for this program, we don't need to be a report, put it in the newsletter. Include it in the newsletter. And so that saves time. And so, but again, you know, it's deciding, you know, what you are, you know, what you're going to be comfortable doing. But it means taking the steps, not drip drabs along the way, because you want to take 5 years to accomplish something that you could do in a month's time. These are all very simple, easy things that you can start to enact to certainly improve the quality of your chapter meeting. And again, you know, if members want to hang out either in person when they have the opportunity to do that, or if they want to sit back on Zoom and, you know, have a beverage and lunch, they can then do that. And they're a lot less stressful, but it's about taking care of the business efficiently. And you want to have fun with it as well. And that doesn't say that these are removing that, but it's not fun. And nobody wants to sit in a meeting for 3 or 4 hours when you could have been completed that business in an hour's time. That's just the truth of it right there. So the members have, you know, you have 2 motions down at, you know, 3. You can, you know, either send it back, stop the discussion, or change the time of the discussion. That can certainly help the president. You know, committee chairs, how you write and deliver your reports are also important. And then as a presiding officer, nobody can be responsible for this except for you. It's how long you sit there and continue. And if you're in debate and people are, and the members are, or you hear the same issues being you know, same comments, you know, repeatedly, you know, it's okay, call for the question, and then somebody again should help you out. But then if you forget, there's some people, and I'm sure in that room, who, if you say to them, okay, I need you to be my previous question people, I need you to be my limit debate people, okay? And so when this is happening, I need you to come help me out, because it's a lot to handle as a presiding officer. And, you know, if they get bored with that, then next month, okay, they switch another month, then you be the committee refer person, you know, or have those people plan it to help you with that, you know, and you know who they are. Whatever signal you want to look at them, whatever it is, now that you Zoom, send them a text message, whatever it takes, is that okay? And once they've heard, you know, this discussion repeated back and forth 10 times on the same issue, that's their job. And then if they don't do that at the end of the meeting, you can certainly deal with them later, but to help you out. But yeah, you know, those are all the things that you can do to certainly to help yourself. It's a huge job. It's a big job. And that's why you have to have, you know, you certainly have a team around you but now don't choose somebody's going to sit there and you'll get caught up in a debate and forget to remind you. You don't want to have that happen either.
That means anybody on here now that's learning this, you are eligible to be on speaking.
Yeah. So, and then on the slide, you also are teaching your members, you know, a little bit more parliamentary procedure. So yeah, give a couple, 3 or 4 people a motion, let them work with that for a while. You know, every about 3 months, switch up, you know, let them move on to something else, something else to do. So, are there any other questions or comments, or that's something I know we went through some things, because generally this is for a much longer presentation. So I kind of just, you know, kind of skip through some things, and it's difficult in this setting to really go through, you know, if you wanted to know more about specific motions, you can set up shorter times and we can just deal with a couple motions, but at least to give the chapter some, you know, basics on, and to either do some further reading, you know, like I say, you can order Robert's Rules in Brief, and the 12th edition came out, the new ones in September. If you order Robert's Rules in Brief, now it's a 3rd edition, that more than will help you get through your basic understanding of meeting, and I think that will help the members as well. What do we have here? I think I'll just skip this for now, because again, that's just usually a little review we do, but I'll just I'll let you guys get someone else. So we'll just go to thank you. But I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you for the invitation. So hopefully you were able to walk away with something today that will help you either be a part of your chapter meeting or lead, or if you're an officer, be able to perform your duties and responsibilities. Because again, it's not just the president. It's all you little lovely names and faces that I see on here. You have a responsibility as well to make sure your meetings are run efficiently and as possible. So thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Quaker City. Yep. And I will send those items over to you. So the form, if you want to take a look at it and
okay, and we'll see where we go from there. But thank you so much. I mean, I think we were enlightened, we were educated, we were informed. Oh, look at this.
Oh, isn't that cute?
Oh, thank you. That's
Oh,
cute.
well, thank you. Thank you so much. That is so cute. It's my first virtual certificate. No, yeah, first virtual certificate.
Definitely appreciate you sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. And we also encourage sorors that if this is something that, and hopefully it is something that you are interested in, to maybe go on and pursue membership in one of the units that are in Philadelphia.
Mhm.
So you have NL Carter, Montgomery County, and then you have Triple P, which is Parliamentarians of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So we have members in our chapter, and I know we have members in NL Carter and in Triple P. And point of disclosure, I am president of Triple P, just so.
Bless your heart.
I don't want to think, this is a point of disclosure.
A whole nother conversation.
Yes, exactly. Don't ask me why, but I am.
That's all the discussion.
But if this is something that you're interested in continuing on with, those units do accept members. It is a 40-question membership test, and they give you a study guide, and then you could go on from there to continue your studies to become a registered parliamentarian, and then go on to become a professional registered parliamentarian. There are several members in our ranks who are studying to become registered parliamentarians at this time. So it's really interesting work. It definitely is interesting work. So if it's something that you are interested in, we'll be sure to share on our QC announcements page the meetings and the learning opportunities that those units provide, because there are also additional learning opportunities that those units provide that you can jump on there free of charge, and they talk about different things. But this has been excellent, and I really thank you.
Yeah, and I'll say, it's, and again, as a professional, we certainly have a code of ethics that we follow. So if you ever want to, to have me like listen in on like executive board meeting and just write down some tips, then I can do that as well. And I just want to share that with the members here, because as a professional, because I know we're all in this area together, but one is who I am as an individual, and secondly, just as the the ethics that I have to uphold to and assign my name to as a professional. And like that new ethics code, I don't want them coming after me. So it's to make sure that whatever is stated there and heard there will not be shared with any of the chapters in the area. So if you need additional assistance and just want to, to listen on that to guide you through as you make some of these changes, then just give me a call and let me know. All right. Well, let's go see if the Eagles are getting their rear ends kicked in again today, or they managed to beat the winless Bengals. Right. We'll continue to stay safe and be well, everybody. And some of you I'll see from time to time, and either virtually or hopefully in person soon. So thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Coordinator of Internal Development.
Miss Coordinator Ball, she got it all.
Yeah. Thanks.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
What you waiting for, Tanya?
Give everybody a chance.
I was about to ask Madam President, like, did she have anything else that she wanted to share or comment on? If not, we're going to just.
Anyone have questions or anything? Not that I can really answer.
No, but I thought it was excellent and very informative. I really did. My question was, were we